I'm here once again with Meridy Volz, fine artist, and we're going to talk a little bit about her work today, and in particular a series which she calls Homeless Women. Tell me a little bit about your Homeless Women series.
I did this series in San Francisco in the late 90s, and I went out onto the streets with my camera and $5 bills and went south of Market. At that time it was not gentrified. There were a lot of homeless people around, and I photographed homeless women. Now they ranged from age 16 to about 85. There was a range of lucid to not lucid, different personalities, different races. The one thing they all had in common, in fact, some people took money, some people didn't want the money. The one thing that they had in common was that they all wanted to print before the photograph. Every one of them went into the pocket and found a comb or a tube of lipstick or something, a mirror.
So a woman will always be a woman?
Apparently. It was a common denominator. There wasn't a single woman, as rough as some of them appeared,
and even the
they
ones
were dressed,
that were demented
wanted to print before the photograph. It was a constant. It was the one thing, aside from all being homeless, that they had in common, and all being women.
Now, we've talked a little bit about your work being figurative. You're a colorist, use a lot of color. Your technique of using your fingers and different tools with the paint, not applying it with a brush, layering your paintings. And so behind you are two of the, actually six, one has sold, so we're going to be talking about 5 of these. And the 2 we're seeing behind you, the shopping cart lady, what's her name?
It's called Warrior.
The Warrior.
Yeah.
And definitely for someone who's homeless and female, she's got a style, a character, a certain
Up in your face.
Yeah, definitely.
She's up in your face. Yeah, and very different from the woman behind me. This piece is entitled Consuelo of the Streets. Mm-hmm. And she was very organized, not up in your face, didn't speak a lot of English, very quiet, very kind of distinguished. She had a distinguished quality about her. She had a lot of pride, actually.
And so these are very large images.
Yes, they are.
We're talking about probably 80 inches by 60 inches.
They're 72 by 84.
72 by 84. I was close.
7 by 6 feet, yeah.
And let's talk about the reclining woman in the park, because that's another one, again, with a lot of power and grace. She owns that bench in the park.
Betty in Repose, it's called. Repose. And yeah, she was very, very, again, very organized. She had a money belt on her ankle. She had sensible walking shoes. She was very organized, very clean. She was taking a nap and she was laid out on top of her pack. Like she had all her belongings tied in with her. She was very aware of her environment. And she was seemed to be very smart. Yeah. They all had different characters. There's another one who is not quite so lucid.
Let's talk about the blanket lady, I think you're probably referring to.
Right.
And she's got that lock of hair over her face,
right,
kind of obscuring her a little bit.
Not quite lucid.
Not quite lucid.
Yeah, not quite there.
She too has all her possessions.
Very organized.
But
they all
bundle
are. That's also something you see from each one of them. They have a way to move their belongings around. A lot of these women sleep during the day and walk around at night to protect themselves. Yeah, it was a very big social statement for me.
Well, let's talk about the last one, which for me was a very powerful one, because at first you don't quite notice that mother and child.
The Madonna and Child of Geary Boulevard.
Correct. You don't quite notice they're homeless. It almost looks like an old antique photo, and then you realize the perspective, and then you realize the homeless sign next to them.
Right. They were sitting outside of Macy's in Union Square. And had a little sign, and the mother had the child on her lap and was, you know, looking for some money for food. And right before I shot their photograph, somebody ran out of Macy's and they had bought a jacket for the child. And so the child is wearing a brand new little jacket that somebody ran in and got. And with that, there's still a very serious, haunting look on both of their faces. The child also looks kind of ageless and deep, looks very deep.
It almost to me looked like a photo from the 20s or the 30s.
Because it has that look of the Depression.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And so your Homeless Women as a series, it's a social statement. You mentioned earlier in an earlier interview that you feel that great art really has to create emotion.
Right.
And so Homeless Women is a very powerful statement, and yet these women create different emotions.
Right.
The warrior is very different.
Yeah, she's up in your face.
Then Consuelo behind you here, who's almost, she feels almost lost a little bit.
A little bit, but there.
But
she was there.
She's observant.
She was, yes.
She's observant.
And self-contained, quiet, like calm.
I noticed that in your art and through your art, you kind of process things and learn lessons and evolve from there. So what was the lesson from these homeless women for you?
I think it was, well, it was pure social statement, a statement of our times. Here are these women and they're living on the streets, and how are they surviving? And so it's about really a statement about their survival in their surroundings. Emotionally, there's a whole feeling of like a resignation almost that kind of runs through all of them in a certain way. You don't see these women headed around the corner for a home. You know, they're just getting through that day.
They're not questioning their state, they're just living it.
They're surviving in their state.
Right.
And I became part of that because here was this artist. And I went out and I had a little book of my work. And I said, well, this is kind of paintings I do, and I would like to paint you. I mean, I was very upfront about why I was taking the photograph. And so it opened up a nice discussion.
Did you find a bond as a woman?
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, I went home, I can remember going home after the photographing, and I photographed over 100 women, a whole lot. I have page after page of photographs I'd taken. And I went home and I just laid there. It just took all my juice and just was stunning to me. It stunned me. I felt like somebody hit me with a stun gun. You know, I just kind of laid there and kind of grounded out all the energy I seemed to have, you know, kind of absorbed from the day.
So 6 out of 100. Tell me about number 7. Who almost made it?
Who almost made it to number 7? There was a number 7. There was 6. There was a number 6, and the 6 sold. And then I left San Francisco, and I migrated to Mexico. And so things changed, and my palette changed when I got to Mexico. So you'll notice that the lighting, and all these paintings are very San Francisco. They're a diffuse light.
They're very cool, a lot of cool blues and almost...
and an overcast.
Evening colors,
yes.
Fog colors as opposed to morning sun bright.
There's fog.
Yeah.
There's a fog in the air. Then we get down to Mexico, and the Mexican work, suddenly I found fluorescence. And things changed because there's so much fluorescence in the tropics, in the flowers, in the sunset, even in the water, in the clothing, and the people, and the indigenous, and so I brought fluorescence in. But to that point, it was not in my palette. So all my San Francisco paintings have a very rich, kind of subdued tone to them. Then we get to Mexico, and it's like Fiesta, Grande.
Well, Meridy Volz, fine artist, thank you very much for talking about your Homeless Women series. Very powerful, large series, obviously available for purchase and for collecting. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.